This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. The father of a Christian girl being held by a radical Islamic terror group is pleading with Nigeria's government to help secure his daughter's release. Islamic terrorists kidnapped Leah from a boarding school in northeast Nigeria more than 200 days ago. They're said to be members of the terror group Boko Haram, and they're holding the 15-year-old because she refused to renounce Jesus Christ and to convert to Islam. Her father is now begging Nigerian authorities to rescue his daughter. Our senior international correspondent, George Thomas, has traveled to Nigeria, joins us now with more on this girl's plight. Can you share a bit more about why she was kidnapped?
Yeah, so basically on February 19, 2018, Leah, along with 110 other girls, were kidnapped by Boko Haram terrorists in the northeastern part of the country. 4 weeks later, close to about 104 of the girls were released. About 5 lost their lives in the process. And Leah was kept back. She was held, in essence, because she refused. She was the only Christian, by the way, Ephraim, in the entire group. And they forced her to convert to Islam. She refused. And in the process, they've held her back, as you mentioned, for 213 days.
Unbelievable. The terrorists have issued an ultimatum. What are their exact demands?
Yeah, they want money in exchange for her life. They say if you don't pay up, we will kill her. The UN alleges that a few months ago, the Nigerian government paid ransom money for the 104 girls who were eventually released, but did not pay money for Leah's release, because the accusation is that the Nigerian government knew that she was a Christian, therefore did not pay the necessary money to get her released. Her father, just in the last 24 hours, has pleaded with his government, the Nigerian government, and the Nigerian president, Muhammad Buhari, who is a Muslim, to have the authorities go in, find her, and bring her back safely.
Well, George, it's now been more than 200 days. Is there evidence that she's even still alive?
There is. Last month, a Nigerian news outlet called The Cable obtained a 32-second audio recording. Reportedly, you hear on the tape where Leah makes the following comment. She says, "I'm begging you to treat me with compassion." This is a message, Ephraim, to the government. "I'm calling on the government, particularly the president, to pity me and get me out of this serious situation." In addition, by the way, to that 32-second, you just saw the image there. In addition to the 32-second audio recording, there was this image of her released that we saw on the screen there. There you go. She's completely covered. Remember, she's a Christian, but she's donning the Islamic garb, and she's sitting in a posture that is the typical Islamic posture that a woman sits in when she's saying her prayers. Clearly, she has not converted to Islam. She's still a Christian, but this was used as a proof of life.
Well, I'll tell you, we hear her plea. We now hear her dad's plea. What is the government doing?
Nothing. I mean, this is the challenge that the Nigerian government has had for several years, trying to deal with Boko Haram that continues to create death and destruction all across the country. And it's a challenge. The Christians in the country are accusing the Nigerian government, led by a Muslim leader, for doing nothing to protect the interests of Christians in the country.
You feel helpless just hearing this. Yeah. There is a prayer effort underway. Can you tell us about that?
That's right. In fact, it launches next week. One of the largest denominations in the country, one that Leah, by the way, belongs to, on September 24th, which is Monday, or to September 26th, they're calling for prayer and fasting for her release.
We know you've been to Nigeria multiple times. Describe the relationship between Christians and Muslims.
Real quickly, this is one of the largest nations, the most populous nation on the continent. It's evenly split between Muslims in the north, Christians in the south. And for decades, there's been this conflict between Christians and Muslims. Keep in mind, just this year, from January to date, over 6,000 Christians have lost their lives. Open Doors calls Nigeria one of the most dangerous places in the world for Christians. In fact, it ranks at number 14 in the entire world. So the tensions between the two groups continue, and the government is doing nothing to protect the interests of Christians in Nigeria.
Heartbreaking. George, our senior international correspondent, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Brett Kavanaugh's accuser has until Friday morning to decide if she will testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senators would ask her about her charges that Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her when they were both in high school. CBN's Gary Lane reports Kavanaugh says he will appear before the committee.
Everyone on Capitol Hill is wondering, will Brett Kavanaugh's accuser, Christine Blasey Ford, appear Monday before the Senate Judiciary Committee? On Wednesday, Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley said the hearing will move forward.
And we're not going to cancel any hearing until the last minute. I don't know what the last minute is.
But later, Grassley sent a letter to Blasey Ford setting a Friday deadline for her to respond to the invitation to testify. Blasey Ford says Supreme Court nominee Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her at a high school party 35 years ago. Kavanaugh has completely denied the allegations. Although her attorney first said she would appear, Blasey Ford now wants an FBI investigation of the allegations before she testifies. Democrats agree. The FBI has conducted 6 background checks on Kavanaugh over the years. In a letter to Senate Judiciary Committee Democrats, Grassley said the Senate can't order another one. Grassley wrote, "The Senate has no power to command an executive branch agency into conducting our due diligence. The job of assessing and investigating a nominee's qualifications in order to decide whether to consent to the nomination is ours and ours alone." President Trump says he won't order another FBI investigation of Kavanaugh.
I can only say this, he is such an outstanding man. Very hard for me to imagine that anything happened.
And critics say a witness like Blasey Ford doesn't have the right to demand an investigation before she testifies. Some conservatives say the Kavanaugh allegations parallel tactics used by the left against Supreme Court Justice nominee Clarence Thomas, and that they can smear reputations, a point that Thomas made at his hearing in October 1991.
There is nothing this committee, this body, or this country can do to give me my good name back.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
A New Mexico middle school is under fire for its decision to deny one of its students' requests to form a pro-life club. The school is in a suburb of Albuquerque, and its principal said the group would be too controversial and unfair to those students on the opposing side of the issue. The Thomas More Society sent a demand letter to administrators telling them the action is unconstitutional and asking them to allow students for life to form the group. Hillsong Church is forming its own denomination, pulling away from Australia's largest Pentecostal denomination. Senior Pastor Brian Houston says the church is a global church with an Australian base, but with its headquarters now in the United States. Pastor Houston says with Hillsong's growth around the world, it needs to be able to credential its own pastors and structure the church in a way crucial for its progress of its mission. Nearly 20,000 members of the military and federal government are helping victims of Hurricane Florence right now. They're performing rescues, clearing debris, and delivering vital supplies. As Heather Sells shows us, they're getting some appreciation from the president.
National Guard, Coast Guard, local fire, police, and others have rescued hundreds of North Carolinians since Florence struck. They expect more, with the governor warning dangerously high water will persist for days.
People that we are rescuing said they'd never seen water like this since they've been here 20, 30, 40 years.
Sergeant Marcus Kiersey's 5-man team has already saved over 100 people. What's it like working in these situations? Behind tough exteriors, these soldiers experience a range of emotions.
It was scary at first, but we went through the training and we just had to remain calm for the people, more or less be brave and do what we have to do to get them out, because if we're scared, then it's not going to make it easier for anybody.
Kiersey, his unit, and other rescuers saw unexpected recognition this week from President Trump on social media.
First responders don't typically seek public praise for their work, but it is a morale booster when the president posts a picture of you.
It's an amazing feeling because it just lets us know that we're doing a good job in the nation's eyes.
Kiersey said his team often has just minutes to act. He described entering neighborhoods and yelling to anyone needing help.
They'd hear us, they'd see us, they'd flag us down, we'd immediately stop, ask them, hey, you have about 10 minutes, try and grab everything you can because this water's rising. We don't want you to get stuck out here.
Staff Sergeant William Moulton says these soldiers are displaying a bravery they didn't know they had.
The biggest frustration we're seeing, honestly, is soldiers who just want to do more. And it's like you have to remind them you need some rest and swap it out.
The Guard says it will stay as long as it's needed to help keep people safe from danger in this historic storm. Reporting in southeastern North Carolina, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Coming up, parents are getting tutors for their children to learn how to better play video games. Find out what this is all about and whether it's good for your children. Next. The video game industry is growing in new ways, with more competition and greater aspirations for gamers. CBN's Lori Johnson talks with experts about the new trends and what you and the children in your family need to know.
Video gaming has come a long way from Atari's Pong. Remember that? Well, now it's a competitive sport, and parents are paying for their children to be tutored in hopes of becoming better players. But why? That's the big question. Family therapist Linda Mintle and CBN's digital expert Caleb Kinchlow joins us now to discuss this new trend. Linda, Caleb, thanks both of you for being with us. First of all, esports, that's what they're calling this, esports, right, and games like Fortnite. What's going on here?
Okay, so first off, esports stands for electronic sports. Essentially, it's just gaming, but in competitive form. And with that, there are leagues, there are teams, there's massive competitions, and there's millions of dollars being put into this new endeavor. Now, you mentioned Fortnite. Now, that's the one that's the biggest one. Is actually on track for being possibly the biggest game of all time. It's essentially a multiplayer survival game, similar to you've seen the movie Hunger Games.
Yeah.
So you have 100 people on a field, and basically trying to kill each other, and the last person standing is the winner of the competition. Now, just to put it in perspective for you, there are 45 million active users playing Fortnite, which means on average, every month, Fortnite makes $300 million, even though it's a free game.
Wow, that is shocking. Linda, parents say their kids are feeling really a lot of pressure to win in these gaming scenarios. What's your thought about that?
So it's like anything. If you're playing a sport, if you're doing an e-sport like you're talking about, you need to learn how to lose, and you need to learn how to be competitive in a sport, to learn how to play with the rules, and you need to learn how to figure things out as you're going. So one of the concerns that we'll talk about in a minute is the way that parents are helping their kids, and I have a lot of concerns because kids need to critically think. They need to figure out how they can lose or win and what they need to do, and we know that there's some good benefits with gaming, that it does help cognition, it does help perception. There's a lot of downsides to it too. So one of the downsides is that when parents get involved, I think they're getting a little bit too helicopter in their approach.
And Caleb, what do you think about actually paying money for tutors?
That's a semi-controversial topic, but think about it this way. It's no different really than when parents would pay tutors for teach their kids piano lessons. The main thing for me is that make sure that there is a balance. So make sure your kids can play and invest in them playing the games, but they also need to have some other real-world skills as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to do this. I think this is crazy to have tutors and to do this. It's not the same, in my opinion, about music and sports. So when my daughter's in ballet, she's actually doing a physical thing with her body that's going to help her mental health, her physical health, and her emotional health. When kids are playing sports, they're out, they're doing, I know they do team stuff, so I know that they're team, but it's not in the face-to-face where they're getting deep into relationships. So the interaction that they're having is very superficial. I mean, how much interaction do you have when you go with your friend to a movie? That's a social thing, right, but you're not talking to each other. And the same is true, you're playing the game. So this idea that you're somehow getting this really socially connected experience, and then the idea that you would pay for somebody to help these kids, to me, again, is just another layer of too much support for kids when kids need to be figuring things out on their own and playing those things. I think it's ridiculous, and I don't think it's the same at all.
Well, there are a lot of kids out there, 10-year-old boys and some girls too, obviously, who are dreaming of gaming as a career these days, and it's hard to believe, but that is really happening. So, Linda, what is your thought about kids wanting to do this professionally, and when they get older? When I grow up, I want to be a professional gamer.
Right. So let's look at like the NFL. So we're talking about sports, right? How many people actually go on to become part of the NFL? So I think it's great if kids have a dream, but I think they better have a backup career for that, because there probably aren't going to be that many careers that are going to support that, although it's a growing industry and there's a lot of money to be made.
Right. I actually agree with that. I mean, there is a very high burnout rate, first off, with it. You start in your late teens, and then by the time you're on your 25 or so, you're basically done.
It's life.
It's life. You're done. But also, there's a large misconception about the gaming industry as well. In order to be a game tester, for example, instead of just a gamer, you have to get degrees in development and programming as well. So it's not just, I just love to play video games for hours upon hours. You need to be able to write and articulate and look for certain specific issues in the game and be able to articulate that to a broader scope.
Right. And parents love to be supportive, Linda, of their kids, but we do have to wonder how video games are affecting our kids mentally and physically. I mean, sitting there on the couch all the time.
Sedentary all the time. But here's the thing, the biggest reason that parents cite that they're getting these tutors is because they don't want their children to feel like social outcasts.
Right.
And they want to help them so that they feel like they're going to win. And my whole thing is, when did my parents get involved in my social life? When I was in high school, I would have been, first of all, embarrassed. I would not have wanted my parents to be in charge of that. And what I'm concerned about the most is that we are having a generation of kids who do not have resilience because they're not doing things on their own. They're not failing on their own. They're not learning to lose on their own. They're not problem solving and thinking. Now, I know some of these games have critical thinking skills, but not in the way of real life. And so we're seeing a lot of kids who can process quickly with their brains, but they don't know how to do the real life kind of activities and actually talk to people, which is important.
Absolutely. Well, CBN digital expert Caleb Kinchlow and family therapist Linda Mental, thanks so much, both of you, for joining us and giving us your insights on this critical topic for both the young and the old.
And still ahead, the world of professional football is all abuzz as Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles quarterback prepares to return to the field. We've got the story coming up next. And welcome back. Carson Wentz returns to the field Sunday. He'll lead his Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles as they face the Indianapolis Colts. And here to talk about this much anticipated return is sports reporter Sean Brown. Before we look ahead, let's look back. What happened that sidelined Wentz? He didn't play in the Super Bowl. What happened?
Okay, so it's week 14, regular season, getting ready to head into the postseason. Carson Wentz, quarterback, Philadelphia Eagles, is heading into the end zone. He makes a dash. Just as he crosses the goal line, he takes a hit, tears his ACL. He is out for the season, puts the Philadelphia Eagles in a terrible situation, but they rose to the occasion, obviously. Backup quarterback Nick Foles rose to the occasion.
Cinderella story.
Cinderella story.
Indeed. So how have the champs started this season?
I had a chance to sit with head coach Doug Peterson to talk with him, and he said that, their thing going into every season, they have this saying, and it's always keep chopping. Keep chopping. He said it takes a lot of swings to chop down that tree, but you got to keep chopping. If you keep chopping, keep working hard, keep studying tape, good things will happen to the football team. And so that's pretty much where they are. It's just because they're Super Bowl champs, it's another day at the office. Let's get back to the grind.
I like that. Now, Carson hasn't taken a hit in 9 months. Is he ready?
We'll find out. I tell you, coming back from an ACL tear is really difficult. But the thing about practicing is you cannot duplicate the speed of the game. And that's where it's going to come down to. 1, the speed of the game, and 2, rhythm with your team, your chemistry with the team. That's something you can only get, you can practice and prepare for it. Hopefully you're ready, when you face that first game, which is, again, coming up on Sunday against the Colts. So we'll find out.
Now, lots of talk about this. Is this the right move for Carson to start over Nick Foles? I mean, he led them to the Super Bowl, so is this the right move?
You know what? This is a debate that I think has been going on throughout the offseason.
Yeah.
The right thing to do, if Carson is your guy, you drafted him to be the starting quarterback for this franchise, you go with him. You're in a great situation because you have a backup that can step up to the occasion and do it all again if he has to. That's a perfect situation. But yes, it is the right thing to do. You go with Carson Wentz. It's his job to lose, which I don't foresee happening. So you make it known. Doug Peterson has said, look, I'm not going to get into this back and forth and try to create a quarterback controversy. Carson is our guy. He's going to remain our guy, and that's the end of it. Now, if we get into week 5 and it doesn't look like it's going well, then the decision is going to have to be made. Do we go with Nick Foles? Do we put him in? Then we'll start having that conversation again, and then it'll be a little bit more appropriate, and then it'll lie with head coach Doug Peterson. We'll have to see. But right now, it is definitely the right decision.
Now, you sat down with the coach. Is there any tension between Foles and Wentz?
No. You know what? It's a competitive sport.
I know.
But they have a really, really unique relationship, mainly that's rooted in their faith in Christ. Every quarterback, starting quarterback, backup quarterback, the locker room, they don't always have that type of relationship, but these guys get it. They understand each other's roles. Nick knows that he is a backup. Every backup wants to be the starter. If you're a backup, of course, you want to be the starter. But again, they understand each other's roles. he recognizes, Carson, you're the starter. I'm the backup. If something happens to you, I got your back. And when Carson went down, Carson's lifting up prayers for Nick Foles. We support you. I think that was pivotal in giving Nick Foles the confidence that he needed to step up to the plate last season, and we saw what happened there. But here we are again for the 2018-19 season, and hey, Carson, you're the guy. I'm going to support you. You can do this. And their relationship, again, is rooted in faith. It's like, look, man, I've got your back. You've got my back. We understand this is bigger than both of us. Let's not jeopardize the team and our going back and forth trying to figure out who's going to start. Now, mind you, of course Nick Foles wants to start.
Of course he does.
But there's a protocol in play, and he's going to respect that. And it's really admirable to see the relationship that these two quarterbacks have in the locker room. I think it's key to leading this football team.
Yeah, and I think that faith spreads throughout the team as a result of that great leadership.
It has. That's a whole story within itself. Faith is definitely present in that locker room.
Beautiful, beautiful. Sean Brown, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you for having me.
Much appreciated. Coming up, actress Gianna Simone talks about how her role in Unbroken Path to Redemption has influenced her life and her faith. The story's next. Gianna Simone has starred in big-name movies like Star Trek Into the Darkness, but more and more she's had some faith films on her resume. Her latest role in Unbroken Path to Redemption was as Louis Zamperini's sister Sylvia. She tells the Christian Post starring in the movie about the war hero and the legend taught her some great life lessons about forgiveness, peace, hard times, and overcoming obstacles.
And those hard times can be the diamond in the rough, and they can be miracles in disguise. Like I was thinking on my way here, I was like, there's no really bad times in life. Like we think they're bad times, but actually God gives us bad times sometimes, and then he gives us good times like 90% of the time, I feel like. And then we're like, no, I don't want a bad time. I don't want to go through pain and suffering. But pain and suffering are actually blessings. And they refine us, they make us more empathetic, they make us more humble, they make us more grateful for the good times. You can't know good without bad.
A great word there. Unbroken Path to Redemption is in its second weekend in theaters. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Have a great day, everybody.